Welcome to the deep dive. You've joined us for an exploration into something we all experience, but don't always understand deeply:
Uh-huh.
our emotions.
Yeah.
We're going to look at some really practical ways to navigate your emotional world more effectively.
Exactly. We've pulled together a really diverse set of insights for you. Think of it maybe as a shortcut to becoming more emotionally savvy.
Okay.
Our sources range from, the Vanderbilt School of Medicine's take on building emotional intelligence to UCSF's Department of Psychiatry and their practical emotion regulation skills.
Hmm.
Then there's the Brain First Institute on the power of just labeling emotions and 6 seconds explaining Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions.
Yes, that wheels
It
fascinates.
really is. And we'll even touch on an interesting discussion from Reddit True Christian about the difference between joy and
Oh,
happiness.
interesting source mix.
Yeah, and an article from Psychology Today on why actually putting your feelings into words helps so much.
Okay, so our mission today is really to pull out the most valuable, actionable nuggets from all this information. We want to give you not just a clearer picture of what you're feeling, but, useful tools to respond in a way that feels more balanced, more in control.
So you're less likely to feel completely swept away by them.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to start, it's probably helpful to have a basic idea of how your brain reacts when emotions run high.
Good starting point.
Information comes in through your senses, right?
Yeah.
And when you're faced with overwhelming stress or really intense emotion, your brain can flip into that primal flight, fight, or freeze mode,
The panic button.
pretty much. And when that happens, your options for how to respond can get really narrow and, clear thinking kind of goes out the window.
Right, like your rational brain just checks out for a while.
Exactly. But here's the key thing. When we can find some balance in our emotions, we actually open ourselves up to a much wider range of possible responses. We can make more thoughtful decisions.
Okay, so it's about keeping access to that thinking part of the brain.
Yes. And it's not just about the immediate reaction either. Emotion is deeply, deeply tied to memory.
How so?
Well, when you learn to stay connected to both the emotional and the logical parts of your brain, you don't just have more choices in the moment. You also bring your past emotional experiences into the decision-making process.
Ah, so you can learn from the past.
Precisely. It can be really valuable in helping you learn and maybe avoid repeating patterns that haven't, served you well.
Okay, so how do we actually get better at managing these emotions in our day-to-day lives? Vanderbilt School of Medicine, you mentioned, outlines 5 core skills for this emotional intelligence.
Yes, they do. And they really emphasize that these skills are all about getting better at handling stress and improving how we communicate with ourselves and with others.
Makes sense.
The first essential skill they talk about is being able to quickly reduce stress right there in the moment.
That feels fundamental. When you're stressed, everything feels harder, right? Emotions get amplified.
Exactly. High levels of stress can really cloud your judgment. It stops you from accurately seeing what's really happening, from truly understanding what someone else is trying to say.
Or even what you're feeling yourself.
Right, or what you need. And it definitely impacts how clearly you can express yourself. So, being able to bring that stress level down quickly helps you stay more grounded, more focused, more in control.
So how do we spot stress creeping up on us? What are those early warning signs?
Vanderbilt suggests paying close attention to the physical signals. You know your body sends cues.
Like what kind of cues?
Things like maybe unexplained muscle tension, that knot in your stomach feel, clenching your fists without realizing it, or even just noticing your breathing has become shallow and quick.
Okay, yeah, I can recognize some of those. So once you notice those signs, what then?
Well, it's also really helpful to understand your own personal stress response. How do you typically react?
Meaning?
Do you tend to get agitated, kind of restless? Or do you withdraw, shut down, or maybe you freeze, feel sort of stuck?
Ah, I see. People react differently.
Totally. And knowing your typical reaction lets you choose stress relief techniques that are specifically tailored to what your system needs in that moment.
So custom stress relief. Kind of, yeah. If you get agitated, calming activities are best. If you withdraw, you might need something that gently brings you back into engagement. And if you freeze, maybe techniques offering both comfort and a bit of gentle stimulation work well. It's very personalized.
That's a really insightful point that our reaction isn't one size fits all. So, what are some of these quick stress reducing techniques Vanderbilt suggests?
Engaging your senses can be incredibly powerful and immediate.
Senses, like sight, sound.
Exactly. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, your scent. They can all directly impact your nervous system. And what soothes one person might energize another, so it's about experimenting, finding what works for you in different situations.
Give me an example.
Okay, so maybe if you're visually oriented, looking at, say, an uplifting photo or focusing on a calming view could quickly bring you down. If sound works better for you, maybe listening to specific music could lower your stress fast.
Okay. And what about things that don't rely on external stuff? Internal techniques.
Breathing exercises are absolutely fundamental. I mean, think about it. When you're calm, your breath is usually slow, deep, rhythmic. Under pressure, it gets short, shallow.
Right.
So consciously shifting to that deep, rhythmic breathing pattern can have a remarkable calming effect, physically and mentally.
What kind of exercises?
Vanderbilt offers a few simple ones you can try anywhere, like slowly counting down from 10 to 0 with each full breath,
Okay.
or inhaling while counting to 4, then exhaling slowly while counting back down to 1,
Simple enough.
or even just pausing for a few seconds after each inhale and each exhale. Really easy to do discreetly.
Those do sound like they'd be easy to fit in. What else? Any other techniques?
Another really effective one is progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR.
PMR. Okay. What's that involve?
It involves systematically tensing and then consciously releasing different muscle groups throughout your body.
Why? What does that do?
The process helps you become much more aware of that subtle difference between the feeling of tension and the feeling of relaxation.
Okay. Training your awareness.
Exactly. And with practice, you can learn to spot and release tension in specific areas almost as soon as it starts.
How do you do it?
Vanderbilt suggests starting with your feet. Tense all the muscles in your feet really tight for a few seconds, then fully release them. Really notice that feeling of letting go.
Okay.
Then you gradually work your way up the body calves, hamstrings, quads, and so on, all the way up to the muscles in your face. Repeating that tense and release cycle for each group.
And then?
The final step is often to tense your entire body all at once, then release completely, paying attention to that overall feeling of relaxation spreading through you.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's skill number 1 from Vanderbilt, rapidly reducing stress. What's number 2?
The second crucial skill is emotional awareness.
Just knowing what you're feeling.
Exactly. Having a clear moment-to-moment understanding of your own emotions and, crucially, how those feelings are influencing your thoughts and your actions. It's really the foundation for understanding yourself better.
And for staying calm when things get heated.
Yes, definitely. For being able to stay centered, especially when situations get emotionally charged.
It seems like for a lot of us, though, there's a tendency to just try and ignore or push down the uncomfortable emotions.
That's very common. Many people become disconnected from what we might call their core emotions. Anger, sadness, fear, joy, often because of past experiences or just learned habits.
But you can't really get rid of them, can you?
No. You might consciously try to suppress them, but the key thing to understand is they don't just disappear. They keep operating beneath the surface.
Affecting things without you realizing.
Yeah, impacting your motivations, your needs, how you communicate. And without a decent level of emotional awareness, you're also much more likely to feel totally overwhelmed when those emotions do surface strongly.
Okay, so how do we get better at this? How do we cultivate emotional awareness? Vanderbilt had some questions for self-reflection, right?
Yes, really good ones.
Yeah.
They suggest asking yourself things like, do your emotions seem to flow naturally or do they feel kind of blocked or muted? When you experience an emotion, is it accompanied by noticeable physical sensations in your body? Where do you feel it? Do you experience distinct feelings that show up in your facial expressions, your body language? Can you actually feel intense emotions when a situation calls for it?
Or do you numb out?
Right. And maybe most importantly, do you consciously pay attention to your emotions? Do you factor them into the decisions you make?
Those are tough questions.
They can be. And if answering them feels difficult or if the answer is often no, it might suggest you've become somewhat disconnected from your internal emotional world.
So the goal is to reconnect.
Absolutely. Reconnecting with those core emotions, learning to accept them without judgment, and just becoming more comfortable with the full spectrum of feelings is vital for your emotional health and your overall emotional intelligence.
That really resonates. Okay, the third skill Vanderbilt talks about focuses on communication, but not words, right? Body language.
Precisely. Nonverbal communication. It's incredibly powerful, often conveying much more than our actual spoken words.
What does that include?
Everything from your gestures, your posture, the tone of your voice, the pace you speak at, how much eye contact you make, even the physical space you keep between yourself and others.
Wow, it's a lot.
It is. And to truly connect with people and build trust, we need to be consciously aware of our own body language and have some control over it.
It's like there's this whole other conversation happening
Oh,
silently.
absolutely. And it goes both ways. We also need to get better at accurately reading and thoughtfully responding to the nonverbal cues other people are sending us.
Even when they're not talking.
Especially then sometimes. Even in silence, we're constantly communicating nonverbally. And it's essential to make sure our nonverbal messages line up with what we're saying and what we're genuinely feeling.
What happens when they don't line up?
It sends a really confusing, conflicting message.
Yeah.
Like saying, I'm fine, while you're looking away, jaw clenched, arms crossed. People pick up on that incongruence.
Yeah, you can feel it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Our nonverbal cues can create interest, trust, excitement, or they can create fear, confusion, and distrust.
Yeah.
Big impact.
Okay. Skill number 4 sounds like a nice one. Using humor and play.
It is. Humor, laughter, play. They're such natural and effective stress relievers.
How do they help?
They help us step back from difficult situations, keep a sense of perspective, stop us from getting too bogged down. Laughter especially. It's been shown to reduce stress hormones, boost your mood, help balance your nervous system.
So, actual physiological benefit.
Yes. And engaging in playful communication actually enhances emotional intelligence in some really interesting ways.
Like how?
Well, it helps you take life's bumps in stride, lets you see frustrating situations from new, less serious angles.
Lightens the load a bit.
Exactly. It can be a great way to smooth over minor disagreements with gentle humor, diffusing tension. It also helps us relax and recharge at the same time.
And creativity, too.
Yeah, perhaps surprisingly, it can make us more creative by loosening up rigid thinking patterns, allowing for more flexible problem solving.
I can definitely see the value in lightening the mood sometimes, especially when things get tense.
Yeah.
Okay, and the 5th and final core skill from Vanderbilt.
That's the ability to resolve conflicts positively, constructively.
Conflict. That's a big one.
It is. Disagreements are pretty much inevitable in any real relationship, right?
Yeah.
But how we handle them can either strengthen trust or really damage it.
Yeah.
When conflict isn't seen primarily as a threat, but maybe as an opportunity for understanding and growth, it can actually foster more freedom and creativity in the relationship.
So, how do we manage it positively?
Well, this skill really relies on all the previous ones we discussed.
Ah, they build on each other.
Exactly. You need to manage your own stress during the disagreement, stay emotionally present and aware, use clear and respectful nonverbal communication, and maybe even employ a bit of that humor to diffuse tension appropriately.
So, using all the tools together.
Yes, these skills work together to help address issues before they blow up into major problems.
Okay, those are the 5 key skills from Vanderbilt. Now, let's shift focus a bit. You mentioned UCSF and their goals for emotion regulation.
Right. UCSF outlines 3 main goals for regulating emotions effectively. First is really understanding your own emotions.
Deeper than just awareness.
Yeah, it involves being able to accurately identify and label what you're feeling, but also understanding the underlying purpose of those emotions. What needs might they be signaling?
Oh, yeah.
This deeper understanding helps you address the root causes of whatever's hindering you from reducing painful emotions.
Like figuring out the message the emotion is trying to send.
Precisely. The second goal is focused on reducing emotional vulnerability,
Meaning.
actively working to decrease the frequency and intensity of negative emotions, and at the same time, consciously increasing the experience of positive emotions in your life.
So, less negative, more positive.
Basically, yes. And the third goal is about decreasing emotional suffering, which is a bit different from just getting rid of negative feelings.
Oh, so.
It involves learning to be present with painful emotions without fighting them or blocking them out.
Acceptance. Kind of.
Yes, and it also includes learning practical strategies to actually change negative emotions by intentionally acting in ways that are opposite to what the emotion might be pushing you to do.
Acting opposite. Interesting. So it's not just about trying to kill all the bad feelings, but also actively growing more good feelings and changing how we relate to the tough ones.
Exactly. And to help hit these goals, UCSF provides a set of specific emotion regulation skills.
What are they?
Well, they include things we've touched on. Identifying and labeling emotions accurately, understanding their function, developing techniques to reduce painful negative emotions and let go of unnecessary suffering,
Okay.
and actively working to increase those positive emotional experiences, which, as you said, lines up nicely with some of the Vanderbilt points too.
UCSF also really emphasizes prevention, right? Staying out of what they call emotion mind. That sounds important.
It is. UCSF describes emotion mind as that state where your emotions are totally in charge, heavily influencing your thoughts and actions, often leading to impulsive or regrettable stuff.
Right, when feelings take over reason.
Exactly. The goal of prevention is to spend more time in a more balanced state. They might call it wise mind, where reason and emotion work together.
And how do you prevent getting into that emotion mind state?
The strategies they recommend are really about fundamental self-care, taking good care of your baseline well-being.
Like basic health stuff.
Yeah, regular doctor checkups, taking prescribed meds. Also, balanced eating, avoiding extremes, avoiding trigger foods like too much sugar or caffeine that mess with your mood.
Makes sense.
Staying away from non-prescribed drugs and alcohol is crucial for emotional stability. Getting enough sleep, trying to keep a regular sleep schedule, that's huge
Sleep is definitely key for me.
for most people. They also highlight daily exercise, aiming for maybe 20 minutes of aerobic activity most days. And finally, making a conscious effort to do at least one thing each day that gives you a sense of competence and control.
Building mastery.
Exactly. These foundational elements really build resilience against emotional dysregulation.
Those all seem like really solid building blocks for overall health, mental and physical. It makes total sense they'd impact our emotional state too. Now, one specific skill they highlighted was observing and describing emotions. Why is that so key for regulation?
UCSF explains that to gain better control over your emotions, the first step often involves creating a little bit of distance, observing them without immediately getting swept up.
Detaching slightly.
Yeah, it allows you to think more clearly and choose better coping strategies. But at the same time, it's important to accept these emotions as a valid part of your experience, not something alien or wrong.
Okay.
And interestingly, research shows that people who get better at identifying and describing their emotions tend to recover from depressive episodes more quickly.
So creating that mental space around the emotion without judging it.
Exactly. Just learning to notice and describe what you're feeling helps you both detach from the immediate intensity and accept its presence. That can lessen its power over you.
How do they suggest practicing that?
They suggest keeping an emotion diary as a practical tool. Track your emotions daily, note the triggering events, maybe reflect on the function the emotion served. They also have a mindfulness of my emotions worksheet. It encourages you to detail the emotion's name, its intensity, triggers, associated thoughts, physical sensations in your body.
Very detailed.
Yeah, and the actions you took, the after effects. They even suggest paying attention to where in your body you tend to feel different emotions like love, joy, sadness, shame, fear, guilt, anger. Where do they physically show up for you?
That's a very embodied approach. Okay, what about when those really strong emotions do take over, despite our best efforts? How can we get back in control?
UCSF recommends a few key steps for when you feel overwhelmed. First, take a time out.
Step away.
Physically step away from the triggering situation if you can. Second,
Yeah.
consciously stop what you're doing as soon as you recognize those early warning signs of a big emotional surge.
Hit the brakes internally.
Yes, and actively interrupt angry, disturbing, or racing thoughts. Literally tell yourself, stop inside your head.
Yeah.
That can create a crucial moment of clarity.
Okay, then what?
Then, engage in a quick relaxation technique. Something simple. Count slowly, get a drink of water, walk around for a minute, take a few deep breaths.
Ground yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, once you feel you have a bit more emotional balance, then return to the situation calmly.
They also made an interesting point about anger, didn't they? About it often being a mask.
Yes, that's a crucial insight. Anger is very often what's called a secondary emotion,
Secondary.
meaning it's a more reactive feeling that pops up in response to a primary emotion that maybe feels too vulnerable or uncomfortable to acknowledge directly.
Like what?
For example, feeling deeply hurt or abandoned might trigger anger as a kind of defense. Or feeling powerless or out of control might show up as frustration, then anger. UCSF encourages trying to backtrack in those moments, identify the initial primary feeling that the anger might have replaced or be covering up.
Digging deeper.
Yeah. Recognizing that underlying vulnerability can be incredibly insightful for understanding and addressing the real root of the emotional response, not just the surface anger.
So some emotional archaeology required. Now, what about letting go of emotional suffering? That sounds like something we could all use.
UCSF outlines a three-step process for this. Step one is simply observe your emotions.
Notice it.
Notice it, acknowledge it's there, try to step back mentally, create a little
Who's
detachment.
that too?
Allow yourself to fully experience the emotion, like a wave. Let it rise and fall naturally without actively fighting it, suppressing it, pushing it away, or clinging onto it.
Ride the wave.
Kind of. And remind yourself, You are not this emotion. You don't have to act on every feeling. Maybe recall times you felt differently in the past. Emotions are temporary.
Okay. And step 3 sounds unusual. Practice loving your emotion.
It might sound counterintuitive, but it doesn't mean you have to like feeling it. It means making a conscious effort not to judge it harshly. Practice willingness, radical acceptance of its presence, respect its potential message. Try not to immediately dismiss it as irrational or invalid.
Approach challenging emotions with acceptance, maybe even curiosity instead of judgment.
Exactly. It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Okay. Now, shifting to the positive side again. What about increasing positive emotions? What strategies does UCSF offer there?
They suggest a two-pronged approach, short-term and long-term.
Okay.
Short-term. Consciously do enjoyable things that are accessible now. Pull from what they call a pleasant events list, hobbies, relaxing activities, things you genuinely like.
Boost your mood right away.
Yes. Long-term, they emphasize building a life worth living
How?
by actively working towards meaningful goals, paying attention to your relationships, repairing old ones, building new ones, nurturing current ones,
Yeah.
and consciously avoiding patterns of avoidance that might be holding you back.
Okay. What else?
They also highlight mindfulness for positive experiences. Really focus your attention on positive events when they happen. Savor them.
Don't just let them fly by.
Right. Consciously refocus away from negative interpretations. Try to accentuate the positive aspects. Gently dismiss the negative chatter.
And what about worries like, this won't last or I don't deserve this?
They actually suggest being unmindful of those worries. Try to distract yourself from thoughts that dampen your enjoyment of positive feelings.
Interesting twist on mindfulness.
Yeah. They provide helpful questions to reflect on what truly makes you feel better and suggest trying imagine breaks, intentionally picturing a pleasant activity and noticing the mood shift. Use those throughout your day.
It sounds like actively cultivating positivity is a real skill, not just waiting for good things. Okay, let's turn to the Brain First Institute and labeling emotions. You mentioned this earlier.
Yes, they really emphasize the benefits of simply putting words to what we're feeling. Affect labeling, they call it.
And what are the benefits?
It can actually reduce your emotional reactivity right in the moment. It seems to modulate activity in the amygdala, that emotion processing hub in the brain.
So it calms things down physiologically.
It appears so.
Ew.
It can also improve cognitive functioning by helping process emotional information more effectively, enhance problem solving by helping identify underlying causes of feelings, and ultimately it contributes to increasing your overall emotional intelligence.
So just finding the right word has a tangible impact on your brain. That's remarkable.
It really is. Neuroscience research backs this up. Affect labeling seems to activate the prefrontal cortex, the regulating, reasoning part of the brain.
Okay.
And activating that area seems to dampen activity in the amygdala. It's like the rational brain tells the alarm system, okay, I see this, we can turn down the volume a bit.
That Lieberman study you mentioned.
Yeah, Lieberman and colleagues back in '07 specifically showed labeling negative emotions led to decreased amygdala activity. Pretty cool.
That's fascinating. Real power in language. So how can we get better at this labeling in daily life?
Brain First Day offers practical suggestions for boosting emotional awareness, which is foundational for labeling, right?
Makes sense.
They recommend journaling or expressive writing, a great way to explore and articulate the nuances of what you're feeling.
Get it out on paper.
Exactly. They also highlight mindful communication. Consciously expressing your emotions using I statements, I feel X when Y happens, focuses on your experience, not blame.
Good for relationships, too.
Definitely. And finally, they suggest emotion-focused meditation. Mindfulness practice specifically centered on identifying and labeling emotions as they arise.
So developing the ability to name our emotions gives us more agency over them. Okay, let's turn to Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions. 6 Seconds explored this. It's a visual tool, right? Helping understand how emotions relate.
Yes, Robert Plutchik proposed 8 primary or basic emotions: joy, sadness, acceptance, disgust, fear, anger, surprise, anticipation.
Okay.
On his wheel, they're arranged with what he saw as polar opposites across from each other, like joy opposite sadness, fear opposite anger.
And these are the building blocks?
He theorized they were the fundamental building blocks for the whole spectrum of human emotional experience.
And the wheel shows intensity levels, too.
Exactly. Intensity is shown moving from the outer edge towards the center.
Sure.
Lighter shades outside are milder forms. Darker shades near the center are more intense versions.
Sable.
Anger, for instance.
Yeah.
Out on the edge might be annoyance. Move towards the center becomes anger. then maybe rage at its most intense.
Ah, okay. Visually showing escalation.
Yeah, and it highlights that important point.
Yeah.
Unchecked emotions can intensify. We need to manage them.
And it also shows combinations, how emotions blend.
Yes. Emotions next to each other on the wheel can blend to create more complex feelings. Dyads, he called them.
Right.
He suggested anticipation plus joy equals optimism. Joy plus trust equals love. It helps us see the layered nature of our feelings, recognize when we might be feeling a mix of things.
So how can we actually use this wheel practically?
6 seconds suggests a few steps. First, pause. Really notice what you're feeling right now. Ask, what am I feeling? And what else? Yes. Then look at the wheel. Try to find the emotion or emotions that best match. Note the intensity level outer edge or closer to the center.
Okay.
And importantly, consider what these emotions might be telling you. Remember, it's not about good or bad emotions.
They all have information.
Plutchik believes so. All emotions have value, carry information. Ask, what might these feelings want me to notice or do?
Mm-hmm.
He thought all emotions serve a functional, evolutionary purpose for survival and thriving.
That's a really useful framework. Okay, let's touch on that distinction. Joy versus happiness. The Reddit true Christian discussion.
Yeah, that was interesting. The participants there explored the idea that happiness is often more transient,
Yeah.
influenced by external circumstances, things happening to you.
Fleeting.
Right. Whereas joy was often described as something deeper, more profound, a sense of contentment, less dependent on those outside factors.
In turn.
Some defined it as a more enduring state of being, maybe rooted in purpose or a spiritual connection.
So happiness as a temporary feeling, joy as maybe more lasting or fundamental. Is that the consensus?
That seemed to be a common thread. Some suggested joy is a being state, happiness an emotion. Others offered that distinction. Happiness is getting what you want. Joy is wanting what you get.
Linking joy to gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude, acceptance. But the discussion also made clear it's subjective. Some argued they're fundamentally the same emotional response, just focused differently. Temporary versus eternal, maybe worldly versus spiritual.
It seems like how we personally define and experience them can be quite individual then. Okay, finally, let's dig into the science from Psychology Today on why putting feelings into words affect labeling is so helpful.
Yes, they explain that this act of consciously identifying and naming your feelings significantly impacts emotion regulation.
How?
It's not just subjective, it can influence autonomic processes like your heart rate. And it alters brain activity, decreasing activity in the amygdala, increasing it in the prefrontal cortex. Regulation's central.
So finding the words has measurable physiological effects. What are the mechanisms behind that? How does it work?
Psychology Today outlines 4 possibilities.
Right.
1, distraction. Just trying to find the right word creates a momentary gap in processing the emotion triggering thing, dampening the reaction.
Right.
2, self-reflection. Language prompts us to step back, reflect on our emotions, process them more thoughtfully.
Makes sense?
3, reducing uncertainty. Labeling a vague feeling categorizes it. That can reduce arousal in the amygdala, which hates uncertainty.
Giving it a name makes it less scary.
Kind of. And
Yeah.
4th, symbolic conversion. Using abstract language signals the brain we're actively addressing the challenge, which can itself be calming.
And the research supports this.
Absolutely. Lots of studies show effect labeling reduces self-reported distress, negative feelings, physiological stress markers like skin conductance, overall anxiety.
Wow.
It's even been shown to improve behavior, like making it easier to approach feared things or even performing better on tests.
That's powerful.
One interesting caveat, though. The language matters. Labeling in a non-native language might not have the same strong down-regulating effect. The connection might be weaker.
Fascinating nuance. Wow, that's a tremendous amount of ground we've covered in this deep dive.
We certainly have. We've looked at a wide range of perspectives, really practical techniques for understanding and managing emotions, drawing from medical schools, psychiatry, neuroscience, EI frameworks, online discussions, psychological research.
Yeah, quite a mix. From those first crucial steps, like quickly reducing stress and building that emotional self-awareness, all the way through to the power of accurately labeling feelings and understanding subtle distinctions like joy versus happiness. It's clear there are many actionable strategies you can start weaving into your daily life.
To navigate your emotional world with more skill and understanding.
Absolutely.
It's just so important to remember. This journey of developing emotional intelligence, it's ongoing, isn't it? It takes consistent awareness, dedicated practice.
It's not a one-and-done thing.
Not at all. Start simply. Pay closer attention to your body's stress responses. Make a conscious effort to identify emotions as they arise. Maybe experiment with one or two stress reduction or labeling techniques we discussed.
Try out Plutchik's wheel.
Yeah, that wheel can be a really valuable tool for just expanding your emotional vocabulary, getting a deeper sense of how your different feelings might connect.
Ultimately, building this emotional intelligence, it really empowers you, doesn't it, to navigate life's challenges with more resilience.
Make more thoughtful decisions.
Build stronger, more meaningful connections with yourself and with others.
Definitely. So, as you reflect on everything we've explored today, what stands out most to you?
Yeah, what initial steps might you consider taking to investigate and understand your own emotional landscape a bit better?
This deep dive is really just scratching the surface. There's a wealth of knowledge out there, so much opportunity for continued learning and personal growth in this really fascinating, absolutely crucial part of our well-being.